Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, coronavirus numbers in Israel marking a tragic new milestone. Meanwhile, newly published evidence in the cases against Prime Minister Netanyahu shedding light on an alleged conspiracy. And finally, the Jewish state getting a reboot online brick by painstaking brick. A grim reality setting in Israel. The health ministry announcing today that Israel's coronavirus death toll now stands at just over 3,000 victims. Nittany Manson with the details.
An infection rate of 3.4% and an overnight confirmed spread to at least 1,700 people, now bringing Israel's active coronavirus numbers back up to nearly 17,700. But with the new numbers also comes a grim milestone. The death toll now breaking 3,000 in Israel, and with 383 more patients still in serious condition, about 100 of whom are currently on ventilators. Still, ignoring the apparent writing on the wall, thousands of Israelis overcrowding Ben Gurion Airport's Terminal 3 on Sunday ahead of Hanukkah holiday flights, many failing minimal social distancing or even to wear masks, as the long lines kept people overcrowded for hours before even getting through security, as airport inspectors largely ignored virus restriction violations. Transportation Minister Miri Regev and Health Minister Yuli Edelstein in response then calling to establish a task force focused on enforcing virus protocols at the airport. Meanwhile, experts expressing concern that hundreds of the 10,000 Israelis already returning from the United Arab Emirates, a brand new hotspot for Israeli tourism, are returning infected with the disease, one office calling it a ticking time bomb. Yet Israel is still currently unwilling to include the Gulf state on its list of countries obligating quarantine. And that's why, in spite of the arrival of vaccines, a third lockdown may still be enforced. All that said, some authorities say there is still hope to be out of this mess by April. The new coronavirus commissioner, Professor Nachman Ash, claiming that with mass vaccinations, it'll only be a matter of months before we return to a more or less normal life. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu similarly stating that we're at the beginning of the end of the pandemic.
Now, though some passenger flights are returning to the skies, more than a few planes are still sitting idle in their hangars due to the global pandemic. So to stay profitable, a wave of changes and renovations is sweeping the aviation industry. With scores of aircraft collecting dust parked off the runway, airlines around the world are now in a race to permanently convert their older, unused passenger jets into profit-earning cargo carriers.
Lately, I believe that the cause is the COVID-19, we figured out that the freighters kept the channel of life in the world, and there was increasing in the demand of conversion.
This as both airlines and passenger-to-freighter conversion companies like Israel Aerospace Industries are predicting a boom in global e-commerce.
Most of the economy now in the world is done by e-commerce. Everybody is under quarantine, etc. So people are ordering, and I know it personally. I know it with Alibaba and Amazon, etc. So all this e-commerce, and it's coming, it's going up and up and up and up. So the e-commerce is definitely pushing the needs for freighters, and for freighters from point to point, not belly freighters that are less available for the market. Actually, IAI is leading the conversion wide-body market. In the last years, we operate between 5 to 6 lines of conversion, and we supply conversion accordingly. The increase in the demand will increase the number of lines that we are going to operate. And what we are expecting that this demand will keep our booking till the end of 2022.
Until now, roughly half of all air freight was carried in the belly of passenger aircraft. But with the use of passenger craft severely reduced in light of the virus, especially internationally, airlines are expecting between a 40 to 60% rise in the demand for dedicated cargo flights over the next several years. In other news, a coronavirus inoculation may be available for the masses soon, but the masses don't seem interested. Poll after poll continuing to show that up to 75% of Israelis plan to refuse vaccination entirely, believing that the rush to approve the vaccines comes at the expense of proper safety research, particularly into the potential long-term effects of the vaccine's revolutionary method of operation. To try and tip the scales, though, Health Minister Yuli Edelstein is already outlining the basic tenets of the government's vaccine incentives program. Under the new plan, vaccinated individuals would receive a so-called green passport that would afford a number of benefits and advantages, such as not needing to quarantine when returning from abroad, as well as permitting entry into cultural events, restaurants, and more. So how are we to move on in the aftermath of COVID-19? It's a tough question to answer, especially as the pandemic still rages on. But world leaders from every corner of the globe are getting in on the action, trying to come up with solutions at a one-of-a-kind summit this week in Tel Aviv. And here to tell us all about it is Ambassador Dani Danon, chairman of the World Likud and Israel's 17th permanent representative to the United Nations. Ambassador Danon, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. All right, now, what is the goal exactly of the Diplotek Summit?
The goal is to make the connection between Israeli innovators and the high-tech community to world leaders. After serving 5 years at the UN, I learned that there is a lot of interest in Israeli technology, and we should leverage. We should help other countries, and we can do it. So especially today, when we are starting to speak about post-COVID world, this is the time to make that linkage, that connection, and that's what we will do at Diplotek 20 Summit. The Diplotek Summit will bring world leaders like Ambassador Nikki Haley, head of states, ministers from all around the globe to speak with the Israeli entrepreneurs to discuss what we can do in the future. And we will expose Israeli innovation, Israeli technology, and we will do Tikkun Olam. It is part of the Jewish tradition to support other people.
All right, now you mentioned some of the high-profile speakers at the summit, including former UN ambassador from the United States, Nikki Haley. What are some of the topics that some of these speakers might be, covering or addressing?
So we will try to focus on technology, innovation, and collaboration to go to the multilateral spectrum. But I'm sure we will hear a lot about what's happening in the region in terms of the new treaty that we signed with the Arab countries, the Iran deal, whether the new administration will go back to the JCPOA or not. So those issues will be also discussed. But in terms of the Israeli side, we focused on Israeli entrepreneurs, startup companies. They will share their knowledge in the field of agri-tech, cybersecurity, health, and other fields to support developing countries and to show them what we can and what we want to do to help them. So,
in your eyes, what does a post-COVID world actually look like? And what are some of the things that maybe you're discussing at Diplotek to get there, to make that a reality?
So from my perspective, I think the main thing is to learn the lesson that yes, we have a nation state. We protect first our people. But in order to overcome the challenges of the future, we have to think globally and to cooperate. So today we are dealing with COVID. Tomorrow it can be another virus. It can be terrorism. Who knows what will come? And we have to cooperate and to work together. And we saw that, unfortunately, those organizations like the World Health Organization, that they were supposed to deal with those kind of situations, they failed. So now is the time to think about what will the future look like, what we are willing to do in order to cooperate. And yes, you have competition, and sometimes we want to protect our intelligence and our knowledge, but in order to succeed in the future, we will have to cooperate more.
All right, now, speaking of cooperation and, of course, world leaders coming together, maybe that feeds into this next response. What did 2020, what did this year and the challenges that came with it teach you as an ambassador and a returning politician?
So I think what we saw worldwide, that the democracies, which are the best systems, we are struggling. Look what's happening in Israel. We are talking about false elections within 2 years. It's crazy. Look what happened in the US in the last elections. It is still the best system, the democracy, but all democracies are fighting, and we have to understand that. And at the same time, I think we have to work harder in order to cooperate. Because when you have a virus in a small country, it can make damages in the entire world. So you cannot isolate yourself and take care only take care of your own problems. You have to reach your hands and support others as well.
All right, Ambassador Dani Danon, thank you so much for your time, and good luck. Have fun at the Diplotech Summit.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has for years been reacting to allegations of corruption, saying nothing will be found because there's nothing to find in the first place. But now, in what looks like an explosive discovery, police are alleged to have illegally fished for anything incriminating about the Prime Minister without cause or even with permission, in an apparent attempt to frame the Israeli premier. Well, here now to give us insight on these revelations is Avi Bell, professor of law at Bar-Ilan University and the University of San Diego. Avi, thank you so much for being with us. Now, what exactly is written, in this revelation that could de-solidify the case against Netanyahu?
Well, the cases have always been problematic at three different levels. There's the level of the initiation of the investigation. There's the question of the evidence that they've gathered, and then the really problematic matter is the crimes themselves. They don't exist. That is, they were invented to fit the facts that they could find. Now, what we're looking at right now in the trial, in the court proceedings, is that the Netanyahu lawyers are pressing hard on the first two aspects: how this investigation was opened and how the evidence was gathered. It does appear that the investigation was launched as a part of a fishing expedition where the police went around looking for nasty stories that they could find about the prime minister, and then trying to fashion around that a criminal case. And then they went and pressed hard, in some cases apparently illegally, to gather evidence. Often apparently without the proper authorization from the Attorney General, which is required before an investigation like this.
Well, so, these discoveries, what are the implications of them? Is this going to cause a mistrial, or are the charges going to be thrown out?
Well, I think that we've already seen that the Attorney General is dead set on bringing these charges. And I think that even before these revelations, it was clear that the weakness of the case was not going to derail the prosecution. I think that if this is up to the Attorney General and the prosecution's office, they're going ahead full steam. It makes no difference what new evidence comes out. The judges, on the other hand, are beginning to look a little bit skeptically towards the prosecution's case. There were some rulings also about evidence in the last couple months and this week, where the court ordered the prosecution to stop hiding certain documents from the defense. That's important because the prosecution had insisted that they were not going to be revealed. They didn't have to be revealed. There was nothing being hidden, and it turns out that there were things being hidden, and they are material. But I wouldn't get my hopes up yet until we see that the court has recognized that these so-called crimes, the crime of bribery of compliments, is not a crime at all. I'm not confident that we're out of the woods. I think that for those of us who are not named Netanyahu, are not worrying about our personal stakes in this, but are thinking more about the fate of Israeli democracy, I think it's important to understand that as long as we have cases like this, where potentially any time the media reports positively or negatively about a public figure, there's a potential for criminal investigations and putting people in jail for saying the wrong things about politicians. We are in deep, deep trouble as a democratic state. It is imperative that these cases be closed with prejudice as quickly as possible.
Well, and again, that kind of brings me back to my previous question. Regardless of whether or not you said Attorney General Mandelblit seems dead set on bringing these charges either way, but in the event of a trial continuing in light of this new evidence, I mean, is this fruit of the poisonous tree? Is this basically going to be thrown out, or is that not really a thing in Israel?
Well, there is no fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine in Israel. That is, even if evidence was illegally obtained, the court can still evaluate it and determine what weight to give it. So it's not an automatic dismissal. There is a doctrine that allows the judges to get rid of cases that were brought improperly or that were brought with bias. That is one of the claims that the Netanyahu lawyers are raising, and I think it's a very strong claim, but that doesn't guarantee that the judges are going to accept it. We don't have here a clear indication of how things are going to end up. I think it's clear what the result should be. That doesn't mean that we know what the result will be.
I see. All right. Well, Avibel, thank you so much for your insights, and I hope to have you back when we know more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. An ancient cistern unearthed in 1934 and then lost again, recently rediscovered by the Israel Antiquities Authority. Incredible artifacts included. And Chana Rifkin reports.
A treasure trove of stone molds, pottery including dozens of oil lamps and more, now unearthed by Israel Antiquities Authorities at a dig site near Beit Shemesh, just west of the capital city of Jerusalem. And just in time for the Hanukkah holiday, too. The 1,700-year-old artifacts, apparently from an ancient oil lamp workshop, were discovered amidst work for the development of a new residential neighborhood.
איך אנחנו יודעים שאנחנו בבית יוצר? בגלל התבניות אבן האלה. תבניות אבן זה משהו שהיוצר, הקדר, משתמש בהן כדי להכין בעצם נרות בכמויות. לוקח את תבנית האבן, מדביק עליה את הגוש חמר, מדביק שתי תבניות עליונה ותחתונה אחת לשנייה, וככה נוצר לנו בעצם הנר, וככה יש לנו בעצם ייצור המוני של נרות, שהדוגמה המאותרת עליהם נראית בדיוק אותו דבר. עוד אחד ועוד אחד, עשרות ומאות נרות שמופצים בכל רחבי האזור, בכל רחבי ארץ ישראל למעשה. הממצאים שלנו בעצם כוללים גם את הנרות חרס. אנחנו רואים כאן פרצוף צלמית של סוס. אנחנו מכירים צלמיות בדמויות אנושיות, נשים, גברים, בעלי חיים. יש לנו מסכות, שזה גם מאפיין את משפחת בית נתיב. באמת איזשהו עולם איקונוגרפי מאוד מאוד מיוחד ומעניין.
Beyond holding links to the lives of ancient Israelites, though, the discovery actually also solves another nearly century-long mystery.
הסיפור שלנו מתחיל בשנות ה-30 של המאה ה-20. מפקח אגף העתיקות, דימיטרי ברמקי, מתחיל לקבל ידיעות על טיפוס נרות חדש שמסתובב בשוק העתיקות בירושלים. אחרי מחקר שהוא עושה, הוא מגלה שמקור הנרות מבית נטיף. ואותו ברמקי מגיע לכאן, עושה את החפירה הארכיאולוגית, מוצא הרבה מאוד טיפוסים של נרות, של צלמיות, את התבניות אבן ששימשו להכנת הנרות האלה, והמיקום המדויק של הבורות נעלם. יום אחד אנחנו חופרים פה, ופתאום נפער לנו הפתח הזה. ונכנסתי. התחלתי להתרגש. גיליתי תיבת מתכת חלודה. מצאנו פה גם את הסלים שבהם הוא חפר את האדמה. בעצם ידענו שבינגו, ידענו שמצאנו את בור המים של ברמקי.
Finally, regarding the area itself, antiquities experts tell us that the artifacts tell the story of the Judean hills in the period following the Bar Kokhba revolt, where much of the Jewish population in the area was diminished and mixed with or replaced by pagan settlers.
Now this next piece is for all you gamers and game enthusiasts out there. Get excited, I know I am, because Build the Earth Israel and the West Bank is a campaign working on a special project building all of Israel and the West Bank in one-to-one proportions on the online game Minecraft. And this in efforts to also bridge the gaps, of course, between Israelis and Palestinians. But here to tell us more about it is the owner of BTE Israel and the West Bank, Bernard Mordler. Bernard, thank you so much for being with us. Now, how did you come up with this idea? And how do you hope that this will bring people together?
Well, the project was started by a popular YouTuber named Pippin. After watching his video in which he spoke about bringing in the whole entire world map into Minecraft, I sort of was like, wow, this is incredible. And I definitely want to get involved and see how I can help out. So upon doing some investigation, I found out that the Israel team needed some management and help. And so I joined in and pretty much brought it to where it is today.
Well, so, what are we looking at? How long does a project like this take? And how far along is it as of now? When will it be available for play?
So it's obviously building the whole entire world, and even building just Israel and the West Bank alone takes a very long time. But we have a really excellent build team behind us, helping us and pushing us every single day on building these structures. And at this time, I mean, I can say that a lot of our larger cities, such as Tel Aviv and Gedera and things like that, are sometimes at most 15% done. And even that alone, that's a huge accomplishment. These cities are massive. So people are really doing a lot of detail work, a lot of small little parts that you might think are, you know, not super important, but we're putting them in anyway.
So what's maybe one of the most intricate things that you've created in this project? You know, how many of the buildings can you actually go into as well?
So I think the most intricate thing that we've built would have to be either the Knesset or Rabin Square. Rabin Square is more recent that we did, and that's huge. We did the square itself, the buildings surrounding it, and detailed it like crazy down to the last lamppost even.
And I see here Israeli
with the Knesset,
towers.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything. And the Knesset, we got all the surrounding areas, the grounds, the gardens, even like the little signs explaining different monuments. We have those in too. So those are definitely some of the most detailed things. And as for interiors, a sort of rule of thumb that we have for every single build team is that if the interior is publicly accessible, then we can build it, but it's optional. The overall goal is to build every single building, structure, park, tree, lamp, parking space in the whole world. So we're really focusing on doing those before we go through in detail in the insides.
Wow. All right. Now, one of my last questions here, what are you most excited for about this project? How long have you been on the project, by the way?
So I'd have to say the project about half a year, maybe a year. And in that time, we've obviously accomplished a lot. And there's a lot of things to be excited about. I love Israel, and showing that in this format is great. We're doing a lot of crazy big things. I'd have to say one specific thing that I'm pretty excited about is the old city, just because it's an important thing. And we're really making sure that we put as much focus and time and energy into that to make it as detailed as possible.
All right, well, I can't wait to travel Israel in Minecraft in the amazing world that you're helping to build. Bernard, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
In other news, for our final item tonight, get your galoshes and your rain gear ready by the door and then try to stay home anyways. Israeli meteorologists are warning that the rest of the week is set to be very rainy and stormy, and with great risk of serious flooding in the Negev desert and coastal areas. From one extreme to another, the last 24 hours or so of unseasonably warm weather is now being replaced with very seasonable yet intense storm systems. This including snow in the northern Hermon Mountains, rain and thunderstorms all across the southwest, and massive fluctuations in temperatures. And with that, let's take a look now at the evening and morning weather forecasts. Tonight should be cloudy with a high chance of showers and temperatures dropping for an average low of about 53 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow should be rainy again with highs likewise falling to around 65 Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. And as always, adorable puppy moments, my favorite. Wow. Impressive. Aw. It's like a puppy pretzel. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.25 shekels to the American dollar and 2.56 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Boris. Thank you so much for watching.